In the last video, we looked at the history of hardware for automated machine tools. And if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But in this video, we're turning from hardware to software. That is, how are instructions written to drive a machine tool? So this is where we are. We've worked our way up from the cutter to the coordinates. And now we're here at G-code. Last time, we talked about how the paper tape was used to store information as far back as the early 1800s. By World War II, paper tape was being used in computer applications. For example, here's Colossus, the British computer that broke the German Enigma military codes in 1943. You can see here the paper tape wrapped around the pulleys. Onto this tape, they punched the codes for each letter of the secret message that they had recorded by eavesdropping on German radio communications. This computer in the back, those are vacuum tubes. That ran the first ever digital computer, and all modern computers are descended from this. As the paper tape spun around those pulleys over and over, each loop, it reread the message from the paper tape and tried a different key until it broke the code. So anyway, what exactly was put onto the paper tapes for those numerical control applications? Very basic instructions like go to X, Y, make a circle of radius R, etc. These instructions had to be punched into paper tape using a typewriter-like machine. But this was the 1950s and 60s, so men were machinists, not typists. And women could type, but they couldn't be machinists. So in addition to all the technical challenges of getting a machine to cut something, in the 1960s, there was also gender challenges. The instructions encoded onto those tapes needed to be really compact, since it was being typed manually onto those paper tapes. So they boiled down those commands to some very shorthand letter and number codes that meant things like go here or set the speed. Those shorthand codes started at MIT Servo Lab, and they evolved over the years until they were standardized in 1963 by the Electronic Industries Association and became known as RS-274, which we call G-code. So what does G-code actually look like? Here's an example of those instructions. This means go horizontally to x equals 2, y equals 3, then move vertically to z equals -1. Pretty easy, but already there's a few important questions to ask. 1. What units is that in? Inches? Millimeters? 2. Is 2, 3, -1 relative to where the tool currently is or relative to the home of the machine? How fast should we go? Should the spindle be on? What's up with G1? Does G stand for go to? Why 1? Is that some sort of unit or just an arbitrary code of some kind? The answer to the first two questions is it isn't defined, and that's a fundamental issue with this specification. It assumes that if you care about the answer to a question like what units am I in, then you have previously specified the answer. Here's a more complete G-code program. Note that the words in parentheses are ignored. Those are called comments. This sort of instruction set, where the device remembers the state of the last thing you told it, has a name. It's called a stateful instruction set. This is convenient because a stateless system, in contrast, would be very cumbersome for humans to write because it would end up looking like a table, something like this. Stateless instructions can be very repetitive. I mean, imagine having to type all of that out on a manual typewriter for every move. Of course, that's why G-code doesn't use that. The disadvantage to stateful instructions like G-code is that you can forget to specify really important things, like what units are you in? Most problems in G-code come from thinking that you told it to do something that you didn't. It's actually a lot like parenting when you come to think of it. Okay, that's the basic format of G-code. That leaves us with the final mystery. What's up with all those letter codes? Okay, X, Y, Z, those make sense. Those are the axes. F for feed, S for spindle speed, those also make good sense. But what's up with G? We've also seen an M command, so what's up with M? Well, really, those are just arbitrary letters that were assigned to different command groups. You might think G stands for go to, but it doesn't. It actually stands for general functions. And M stands for miscellaneous functions, which to me sounds a lot like a general function, but what do I know? And here's the subtable of just the G commands. There's just really two important G commands. G0 means rapid move. This has the assumption that the tool will not hit anything while it's moving. G1 means move in a line at the previously specified feed rate. There's also a lot of other commands in these groups, but for basic CNCs, these are really the only two that matter. In fact, in Zig-Saw, we only use G0 and G1 as native commands. We don't use circles or arcs or anything like that. We just approximate curves with lots of little itty-bitty line segments. So all those G and M codes are abbreviations for common operations. And of course they are, because remember that these all had to be typed in by hand on a typewriter like Paper Punch. So that's the history. But man, things have changed. Nobody writes G-code onto paper tape. In fact, nobody really writes G-code at all. Everybody generates the G-code using software, specifically software known as CAD/CAM. That is, computer-aided design followed by computer-aided manufacturing. In our case, Zig-Saw eliminates all the hours of clicky-clicky part of the 3D CAD, and it does all the CAM in one click. That said, I still think it's pretty useful to be able to understand it, and as we've seen, it's just really not all that hard. So now that we understand what G-code is, let's make some of it. We're going to use Zig-Saw to create the G-code, and then load it up into our CNC and cut something with it. Specifically, we're going to cut the drawer faces that we've designed and lofted in Zig-Saw in the previous two videos. So we'll drop a link in the description if you want to go back and check out those videos. You can see how we designed and created this. But let's get to it. Let me start screen sharing. Okay, so here we are on zig-saw.com, and this is the composition we've showed in previous videos. So I'm going to go now to the Carve tab, and I'm going to hit this new Carve button, and I'm going to make sure that the roughing, the refine, and the detail are what I want. 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, that's fine. And the grain runs along the y-axis, that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start, and it'll take a few seconds. It'll go off to the cloud, and it'll compute the carve for this. So we'll probably skip forward here. All right, so we're done now. You can see it took 34 seconds, and we can see a preview over here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the download result here, and it requires that we be logged in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that we're logged in, and now that it's downloaded, we can scrub through the movie and watch it. So here it is carving. There's the rough there, and now we're coming back in with the refine and a little detailed cleanup. Great, so we are ready to save the G-code. We first want to set the feed rate. So in this kind of wood, a 70 inch per minute carve is just fine. The maximum is how fast you're willing to go if there's not much to be carved. So the minimum is the rate at which you want to go when you're carving maximum depth. And yeah, for us about 70 is fine. So, but we can go up to about 100 when we're not carving much. Saves us a little bit of time. Over here you can see the estimated time for each of these tools. So it's going to take about 38 minutes on the 1/4 inch. And we're going to end up with like a little less than 1.5 hours total cutting time. Down here in G-code, we see our preamble and our postamble. So this is the extra little bit of information we're going to emit out in our G-code. And you can see here that we know how to read this now. There's G20, put it into inches. Just for safety, I put it up 0.1 inches above the top of the surface. This is assumed to be top datum. That is that we're going to zero out on the top of the board. So a positive number here means a little above the board. And then we're going to turn the spindle on. And at the end, we'll stop the program. We'll just hit save here, and it has saved out. We recognize what .nc is now. That's our numerical control extension that we know how that came to be. And we've saved one for the 1/4, the 1/8, and the 16th. And this little funny number right here is just a unique code that's assigned to each carve so that we don't have to remember what the name is, and to make sure that we don't overwrite any other previous file. And we'll go take that over to our CNC G-code interpreter, which in our case is Mach 4. All right, we are in Mach 4, which is a popular G-code controller. Obviously, for you, it might be a different kind of controller. Your CNC may have its own built-in, or it might use a similar computer-based. Basically, the idea is we're going to load some G-code. So in our case, we're going to load G-code. And there's the 1/4 inch tool path set that we just made. So let's open that. Takes a few seconds here. And all right, so there's the preview of it right there. And you can see right here, we know how to read this now. This is the G code that was generated by Zig-Saw. You can see it's mostly just G0, G1, and some comments. G0, of course, are the traverses. G1 is a movement, as we already know. So, for example, this particular one is down to minus 0.5 inches. Up at the top, when we saved the G code in Zig-Saw, it through that preamble that we just saw there. So we've loaded it, and basically all we have to do is hit start here. And when this is done, we can close our G-code and load up the next tool. We don't have an automatic tool changer, so we would just change the tool. Let's load up the 1/8 inch and repeat the whole process. So there's the 1/8 inch one, and just for good measure, I'll show you the 16th inch carve too. Load up the 16th. And there's the 16th. You can see the 16th is mostly just traverses and then touching up little tiny details that need to get carved out. There's a few little areas down here that had to get a little bit of excavation because they were narrower than 1/8 of an inch, but mostly it's just touching up corners. All right, so we'll hit start and we will watch it carve. So we've loaded up our blank for our drawer face, and we've zeroed out to the corner down here, and we've set the 0Z to the top of the board. And we're not going to show how we do all that because there's already a lot of videos that are specific to the CNC model that you might have. But we've loaded up the G code that Zig-Saw generated, and we're going to start the run. All right, so the first thing that the G-code that was generated by Zig-Saw does is it traces a perimeter of the maximum extents of the cut along X and Y. And so this allows us to just sanity check that it's not going to hit any clamps or we haven't, zeroed something wrong. And so once we've seen that complete, we feel safe to let it go. That wraps up our epic look into CNCs and G-code. I hope you found all that history interesting. Please check out our other videos about Zig-Saw and try out the free version of it yourself. We hope you'll carve something beautiful, and as always, send us pictures of anything you make because we can't wait to see what you're up to. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you next time.